Hello and welcome to Chris & Co, the show looking at what affects business in Kent. With me, Chris Price. Joining me this week are property lawyer Lorraine Homden, Sally Taylor, owner of Broadhenbury Holiday Park near Ashford, and Canterbury Christchurch University finance lecturer Dr Daniel Santamaria. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be talking about the county's thriving tourism sector, which, before last night's thunderstorms, has been enjoying a boost from the sun-soaked summer. First, though, we're looking at the age-old British obsession with the direction of house prices. This week, figures from property website Zoopla made Swanley the 8th best housing hotspot in the UK, where the average property will set you back more than £362,000, up nearly 6.5% since the new year. In nearby Bexley, the average price is nearly £478,000, where a rise of 6.56% since January makes it the 5th ranked hotspot in the country. Yet research from the Halifax and the Royal Institution of the Chartered Surveyors suggests house price growth is slowing down across the southeast, the latter's findings giving it the lowest reading since November 2012. So should we be worried that house prices are appearing to slow down, or should all the figures be taken with a pinch of salt? Well, I will throw those questions to my panel. Lorraine, you are a property lawyer. If perhaps I could ask you, do you think then that there is any concern to be had about that house price growth does appear to be slowing down?
I don't think there's a great deal of concern, other than the uncertainty for Brexit does seem to have been a big factor on whether people are buying or selling houses at the moment. There's a lot of people that are deciding now to build on their houses for their needs rather than to put all their money into buying a house that they don't know what is going to happen to the value of it in the near future. House prices have always gone up and down. There's been recessions there's a pattern of recessions happening every 8 to 10 years. But what we've never been through before is the Brexit, which is concerning most people. Sure.
Do you think that the information about Bexley and Swanley, where they've been sort of indicated as these property hotspots, in light of this slowdown in house price growth, do you think that actually the reason that they're apparently doing so well is to do with their proximity to London, or is there more to it?
Yes, no, I think it is just really not just the proximity to London. There's a lot of surrounding things that are quite good for those areas. You've got very good schools in Bexley. You've got the grammar schools. You know, when people are buying houses, they want to consider a future for their family, for their children. You've got Blue Water nearby, whereby you've got the shops. You've got a lot of leisure facilities. You've got Ebbsfleet Station that can get you in London in just over 20 minutes, or to Europe, to the coast, wherever you want to go. So I think the average earnings that you can earn in London, you can buy a property in Swanley or Bexley and still get into London quite quickly. And the measure of the earnings to the price of the property is a good factor that people look into. And that with Swanley and Bexley, they are just far enough out that you can get into London or to the coast very quickly.
Sure. Daniel, do you think that there is any other element to perhaps why there is a concern about slowing down of house price growth? Is it anything to do with perhaps people not having as much money to spend at the moment?
Yes. Particularly with the amount with the wage inflation slowing down relative to the CPI index, and the fact that households are generally over-leveraged due to the growth of consumer credit since 2014. Putting these factors together, that may have contributed towards, in light of the recent vote to leave the European Union and so forth, contributed towards a situation where they're having to delay purchases of large assets going forward. So it can be a concern. I think a lot of it could depend on what happens in the next 2 years in the forthcoming Brexit negotiations, whether we get a good deal or not, what is the wider economic response to that, and how consumers feel going forward, whether they feel confident enough to take that step towards buying a property, particularly in that part of the world.
Given that house prices aren't growing as fast as they had been, should we be thankful that actually for people who are trying to get onto the ladder, that actually house prices aren't running away from them as fast as they were before?
Yeah, it's actually it's a good thing, because the worry is if you have an overheating housing market, the likelihood is going to burst. Okay. At some point, the affordability factor comes in. It is coming in right now. The income to value, the income levels relative to the house price levels are, it's getting to the point where they can't afford, they don't have enough, unable to raise enough of a loan or a mortgage in order to buy those properties. So there is that element in there. At some point, it has to come down because of the affordability factor.
Sure.
I think what I would add though is that the fact that the Bank of England has recently ordered banks to put in an additional, or set aside an additional £11.4 billion set aside for reserve in case there's a financial, an economic shock, will force lenders to actually rein in on their lending. And that could, in effect, cause house prices to taper.
It's a topic we could talk about for a very long time. But unfortunately, we have a whole show to do, so unfortunately, we are going to have to move on. But we will drag it back, I'm sure, to apart to house prices. But if you don't want to spend your hard-earned pennies on property, perhaps you'll join the thousands who've been heading to the county's tourist attractions this year. Record temperatures in June have given a boost to a sector which contributed more than £3.5 billion to the Kent economy last year. There are hopes the county will top its record 60.6 million visitors who came to the Garden of England in 2016. Here's Harry Peat.
The Garden of England is looking like it's more popular than ever. Kent's tourism hotspots have been boosted by a scorching start to the summer season, with temperatures reaching record levels. So, is our county set for its biggest year of tourism to date?
We are enjoying a fantastic season because of the great weather. Good weather is always going to bring more people out and about. It's going to encourage people to maybe get out of the cities like London or further afield and come and explore what they perceive to be the countryside, but also the wonderful towns and cities of Kent. We've been blessed with a wonderful summer that always sends capacity and visits through the roof, so we're enjoying a good season.
So why do so many visitors from further afield visit Kent?
We come from Holland because of the history.
These nice little streets, it's so, very English and very interesting.
We come from Germany, so near to Cologne. All the old houses, very nice parks.
This is how the British people live, what they eat, and even it's only having fish and chips.
Last year's tourism brought in more than £3.5 billion for the county's economy. And with the visitors already coming in thick and fast, business owners are also predicting another big year.
It's going to be a really good summer this year. We've got an extra boat down here as well to accommodate more and more people, so less waiting time and just constant flow of boats going out. I mean, even on the quieter days, it's been steady flow of people. So yeah, it definitely affected things in a positive way. I remember last June, which is kind of the start of summer. It was dead and it was cold.
Now, Canterbury's waterways and historic buildings still make it one of the most popular tourist destinations in the county, but thanks to some TLC and this improved lovely weather, there is one more traditional tourist destination that is making a revival.
More and more people are discovering our coastline is a huge story for Kent at the moment. No one could have failed to notice the stratospheric effect that Margate has had on the world. The time of the declining seaside town we're hoping to see is at an end now. Our coastal towns are enjoying a really, really great period of regeneration, of new business and more visitors.
So with the tides changing in favour of Kent's beaches, the weather's set to stay scorchio, and Kent's pulling power to the staycationer, it looks like Kent is well and truly pointing in the right direction.
So, Sally, you've been sitting there very patiently and quietly through the show so far. Is it too simple to say that the reason Kent's tourism sector is doing well is because of the sunny weather this year?
I think so, yes. We've had sunny weather before, but tourism's continually growing. Obviously it helps. It's really hard to completely extrapolate it away from what's happening in tourism, but there's also a massive boom in the staycation market for English people finding new areas in the whole of Great Britain to go and explore. The low pound obviously is a massive benefit to our continental visitors. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of factors. Kent's getting better at promoting itself as well. So yeah.
Do you think that after the vote to leave the European Union last year, when the value of the pound did fall and made it cheaper for people from abroad to come here, do you think that it was expected that we were going to get a big kick-start this year and potentially a year where we were going to get record-breaking figures?
Yes, to a certain extent, but there was also quite a lot of scepticism in the market about, well, will no one come because they think that we don't want to be part of Europe anymore and we don't like them anymore and they won't come. And actually, it was quite the opposite. They came because they're really curious. Lots of them are interested to hear why we voted out, what's the general opinion going on in England. And it's almost like it sparked a huge interest in England and in British people and what we're doing, and it is really curious to see the questions that the Continentals are asking us.
Were business people in general expecting an influx of tourists from continental lands? Briefly.
Yes, very in a nutshell, yes. I imagine there would have been expecting a huge increase in the demand, and it looks like this is something that's going to continue indefinitely over a sustained period of time, given the fact that the value of sterling I foresee will remain very, very weak for the foreseeable future.
Sure. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so thanks very much. Coming up after the break, an Elizabethan building gets a makeover, plus we reveal our number of the week. See you right after the break. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the boost enjoyed by the tourism sector thanks to this sunny summer. Yet local economies are only able to take advantage of good weather if their attractions are in good order. This summer, Eastgate House in Rochester has opened fully to the public for the first time in more than 30 years after a £2.1 million revamp. The Elizabethan building in the centre of Rochester is famous for references in Charles Dickens's novels such as The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Louisa Britton has the story of its 2-year conservation and its impact on the town.
It's taken 2 years and more than £2 million to restore this historic townhouse in Rochester's city centre to its former glory. The Grade 1 listed property dates back to the Elizabethan era and is famous for its references in Charles Dickens's novels. It was in a state of terrible disrepair when work started, but as of this week it will be fully open to the public for the first time in more than 30 years.
Well, it was in a sorry state and it was declining all the time, so it was sort of a shame to see it in that state, but Medway had the vision to bring it back to a building that they could use and done wonders really. It's been a challenge, it's been hard, but now to see it all finished, it is absolutely brilliant.
It was built in the 1590s but has taken on many shapes and forms over the centuries since its original owner Sir Peter Buck had it built.
So the house was his first. It extended to around 3 times its original size under his family. It's also been a boarding school in the Victorian era, inspiration to Charles Dickens, who featured it in 2 of his novels. It's been a young men's hostel, a temperance restaurant and a museum. So it has this multifaceted history, which gives it quite a unique feel for visitors, because it's not just about one story, it's about many.
Thanks to funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, the careful conservation work will also add to the historical tourist attractions Rochester has to offer.
We're adding to attractions in Rochester and it's becoming a first-class tourist destination now, and I think that anyone who visits Rochester will be delighted with this building. I think it's you've got the castle, you've got the cathedral, big public buildings, but this one is a domestic building fundamentally, and I think it's a different, completely different feel to it, and it shows an example of how a house can continue in use for over 400 years.
But this isn't the end of conservation work here at Eastgate House. Now that this latest project has come to a close, Medway Council have their hopes set on restoring Charles Dickens's Swiss chalet. It can be found in the gardens next to Eastgate House and was the setting in which Dickens wrote 5 of his novels. At the moment, it's supported by a steel structure and is in need of repair, work that's estimated to cost up to £100,000. If successful, this project could be yet another piece of Kent's heritage the public will be able to enjoy. Louisa Britton, KMTV, Rochester.
Okay, so Sally, we heard there about the impact of the investment in Eastgate House on Rochester. Should investment in tourism be a priority given the economic benefits that it can bring for communities?
Well, certainly I would say yes. I might be slightly biased, but I believe so. It's a huge export market for Britain. It deserves investment. It's something to be really proud of. We're good at it. We should invest more in it and capitalise on everything that we're good at.
Sure. Daniel, do you think that there are ever any times though when perhaps investment should be directed elsewhere? I don't know, perhaps road or rail or something like that. Are there ever, presumably those are linked though as well?
Very much so. Whatever industry you're focused on, what is vitally important is you have good transport networks, good road networks, so that the whole regional economy could function. This will benefit the tourism economy enormously. It will reduce the hassles towards tourists, give a good impression about Kent and also the country as a whole. And that you have a good transport network. You can go across from one part of the country to another, or to London and so forth. Yeah.
The big tourism story in Kent has been the possibility of an entertainment resort on the Swansea Peninsula between Grayson and Dartford. Originally Paramount Park. Paramount have now left that. Do you think that the focus on tourism, investment tourism, is because it's quite a sexy industry? You know, you think of these big schemes or going to the seaside, things like that. Do you think that sometimes tourism gets an advantage because it's seen as quite an attractive thing to spend money on?
Yes, I think it does, because you're bringing more people into it. You're bringing more people into the area that will get more knowledge on the area. Back to my point of view, for buying properties and things like that, because they want to be quite close to it. There's more employment from the Paramount thing that was going to happen. More people want to live close by for employment reasons, fun reasons for children and families, whatever. So yeah, it's a good investment, I believe. And also you'll get a lot of tourism for people coming from Europe over to Kent to come and see what we've got to offer.
Sure. I mean, obviously the resort still says that it's going to happen, but Paramount aren't part of it. But are there times perhaps when a big tourism project might not be so welcome? Something like that scheme. There's been a lot of concerns about the traffic implications. Is there anything that the industry is trying to do to make sure that tourism sort of gels well in with the community, or are big projects like perhaps the entertainment resort an anomaly that doesn't really apply to the rest of the industry?
I think as an industry we're getting better and better at environmental considerations, and certainly for a lot of our continental visitors they are much more environmentally savvy than perhaps we've been. They are devastated if they can't recycle something immediately, and it's really important to them. So as an industry we've all had to sort of pull our socks up with that, and quite rightly so. Tourism investment is held accountable. It has to be environmentally conscious. It has to have that conscience, or it shouldn't develop, and it won't attract the visitors in the right way if it doesn't have that consideration.
Sure. What happens to house prices in areas where you have a strong tourism sector? Is there any? Does tourism have an impact on house prices in areas?
I wouldn't say there's a particular impact on house prices, but I have noticed that a lot of my clients are now moving down to the tourism areas. There's a lot of people moving to Whitstable, Broadstairs, just a lot of retirement places as well, that people were just happier to settle now in the tourist places of this country rather than going abroad to the Spain and the France that they used to years ago. But once again, I think that is down to Brexit and the uncertainty. But also I think with the tourism are making our coastal areas much nicer places to live. And to retire and be there with your grandchildren and families and just enjoy life.
I would add that tourism, the boost to the local economy from rising from tourism, the boost of employment opportunities for the local areas should feed through into demand for housing in those particular areas. Especially, it will encourage businesses in the service sector to set up to capture that market share. It will boost local employment, and hopefully, in theory, and hopefully over a period of time in practice, it will translate into house prices, stable house prices.
Yeah, I mean, in towns like Margate, for example, where there is a strong tourism industry, house prices aren't quite there yet. What do you think needs to happen for that? What kind of things will allow that to change? Is that something that's reliant on the tourism sector?
Well, I think it's got to be to do with the development of the region, of the area as a whole, whether small businesses are located in those areas to support the local economy. Where house prices will fall is if businesses go away. Okay, so
I think it will be up and coming. Margate has changed an awful lot over the last few years, and it will soon become a desirable place to live. The more people you've got living there, the more businesses you've got there. You'll have more shops, more restaurants to cater for the people that are living there. I think it will definitely, you've just got to watch that space, I think, and that will improve in time.
Watch that space. Thanks very much, guys. Okay, before we go, we just have time to reveal our number of the week. And this week's number is 2.6, as you can see. That's the UK's rate of inflation, which unexpectedly dropped in June, mainly due to lower petrol and diesel prices. Economists say this has eased pressure on the Bank of England to increase interest rates. So, guys, was this a figure that is this figure a general trend? You're gonna see inflation stop rising as it has been, or is this just a blip and inflation will keep going?
It all boils down to what happens to the value of sterling at the end of the day. At the moment, inflation is transitory. There's no second round effects caused by wages going up. It's purely down to the fluctuations in the exchange rate. Now, that depends on what happens with the Brexit negotiations. It also depends on the political, whether there's going to be a second general election or not. The political paralysis resulting from the hung parliament we have now. But there's no escaping that the economic fundamentals are deteriorating, and that's no escaping that. So it is quite possible that the sterling will dip further before the end of the year, and we could see another increase in inflation, probably in a region of between 3 and 3.5%.
Right. I mean, one of the worries linked to inflation is real wages not keeping up with them. And guys, do you think that this is, this is a real problem for people, at home, isn't it, guys?
It is. I employ people, so I pay wages, and I would love nothing more than be able to give them more money. They work very hard, they deserve everything they get, but you can't pay out what you haven't got coming in. Yeah. And it's very difficult. The market just isn't stable enough to know. We're constantly, myself and my business manager are constantly doing budget sheets to check what's coming in, what we can afford to do.
Yeah, Lorraine,
thanks. It's the uncertainty.
Thanks very much for your thoughts, guys. Really appreciate you coming in. That's it for the latest edition of Chris & Co, our show looking at the issues affecting business in Kent. You can keep up to date with all the county's latest business news at kentbusiness.co.uk. That's it. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.